Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Acquire podcast. I'm your host, Jennie Wright. I'm a list build and lead generation expert and sometimes fractional CMO. So, this podcast is all about list building and lead generation. It is also all about marketing and all the tactics to create successful launches in your business. I think these are really important business growth tactics for us to master. That's what we're here to talk about. And I'm really excited because a couple of weeks ago, I met somebody that instantly grabbed my attention in a room, and that was Gazzy. Gazzy it lives in Toronto, same as me, and didn't know this, but apparently we went to the same high school, but many years
Yeah.
apart. And we also speak the same languages, a bunch of them together, which is fabulous. We just had a great conversation about that. So I just want to share a little bit about Gazzy, and then we're going to get started. And Gazzy really caught my attention at this event because she was talking about ethical sales and empowering entrepreneurs with some pretty revolutionary methodologies. And I have done my research on Gazzy, so I can't wait to talk about this. And a huge background in engaging a ton of people, not only in this like the political sphere, she did a ton of work in that space, but also in her own mission driven venture in 2020. So there's a lot going on here. And she's pretty well known in this space. And I mean, if you check her out on her socials, it's all over. She's just kind of owning this ethical sales space. And I was really excited to have her on. So, Gazzy, thanks so much for being here.
I'm so excited that you asked, and it was an instant yes for me. I can already tell all the connections when you're like lead gen, launches, all. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. These are the topics that I would love to talk about.
One of the things that when I met you, that I was really interested in, you were a speaker at an event that I was at. Julie Greenham, who's also a, comeback guest that's been on the podcast a couple times, who's amazing. She hosts this event called the Elevate event or Elevate Experience. And one of the things that you talked about that I loved was sales beyond scripts. And
Mhm.
if I can kind of set this up a little, my first sales experience was door to door, cold selling. And I had been trained by somebody to have a script. I even had like a flippy deck, in like
Yeah,
plastic sheets,
yeah.
right, to flip and stuff like that. So I had a sales script and I couldn't sell for the life of me. I was horrible. Some people have heard this story even on this podcast that I was like a shark. My eyes rolled in my back of my head and I just kind of like went chomp chomp for the sale and it was horrible. And the best thing I could have ever done was have a conversation with my manager who said, drop the script, listen
Yeah.
more than you talk, and drop the script, connect with people, and create authentic connection, which is literally your sales mantra.
That's literally it. I have goosebumps hearing it. I'm like, that's magic to my ears. That's what it's all about. And listen, sometimes I've seen scripts be helpful. I'm not going to lie. I've used them
Mhm.
myself. When I started my business, my first coach also gave me scripts. And I realized it just doesn't work for everyone. And in this digital era where, everyone's constantly selling on social, when you do use the scripts, the prospects can feel it and they know it's a copy and paste strategy. And so I just think it's kind of outdated. I'm not going to say don't use a script because everybody's got to find what works for them. But I find you start to sound like everyone else and you don't want that in sales. Like that's where you lose that authenticity. I prefer the word like a sales flow because sales does have a journey that you follow, but it's not a script. And so I like the idea of having a structure to support and set you up
Yeah.
for success, especially if sales is new for you. The idea of a script, it just feels so fake. And I feel like people know when it's a script. I do. When somebody hits me up with like a script, or they're just waiting to get to the next line, I'm like, I know you're not listening to me. You're
It's
just
a
trying to
hundred
get through your
percent.
script.
A
Yeah.
100% is it always, yeah, it's absolutely going to be that way. 100%. I actually, have you ever had those calls when you get the phone call from somebody and they're like, hey, like, let's talk to you about I don't know, your cell phone plan. I will say to them, this call will go a lot better if you just, like if you just go off script and ask me questions and
Yeah.
actually try and understand my needs. Like it's so much better. So
That's what sales is about. That's all
yeah,
it.
it is. And I kind of want to go back a little bit because you mentioned something that piqued my interest. And you said that your first job in sales, you had a sales script. What was that job?
Mm. I was starting out as a coach in 2020 and I launched a program which I don't run anymore. It was called Cash in Your Passion. And I was helping aspiring entrepreneurs build out their business and land their first 5 clients. So that's now 2020. And I remember at the beginning, I thought I needed a script. Like I was a new coach, and that's what people were telling me. Like, this is how you find clients. And I realized, like, I tested that out. It didn't work for me. So I was like, it might work for other people, but this is not going to work for me. I don't sound like that. Like when I talk, I don't talk like that. And so I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. Because if they do decide to become a client and then they talk to me, they're going to be like, you sound very different. Like, I have to crack jokes. That's part of who I am. And so, like, you're going to see that in the sales process. And if you don't see that, then it's kind of like, it just feels like there's a disconnect in that authenticity and that human relationship. And that's when I was like, I got to drop this and find my own way.
Mm-hmm. I want to get into a couple different topics. I mean, I have so many questions. Talking with somebody else that gets sales and talks about sales really gets me going because there's so much to talk about, especially in the online space, but also in the B2B space. And one of the things that I feel compelled to talk about is ethical sales, because the fact that you mentioned ethical sales tells me that you've had experiences, either personal or otherwise, with non-ethical sales. Are you comfortable sharing a story or anything there?
Absolutely. And I would say both sides. Like, I've been sold to or in a sales conversation or buying conversation with someone who, in my opinion, was going beyond ethical sales. Um, like, it was a blurred line, is what I felt as the prospect. And I've also seen or been aware for me of remaining on that ethical side, or noticing, like, am I in it for the commission or am I in it for the right cause? Is this really a good fit for someone? And I think sometimes, as coaches, consultants, service providers, entrepreneurs in the online space, we are so stuck on hitting those income goals and selling out and getting people into the program, that sometimes there could be a blurred line. And so for me, what that has felt like I've been in debt and somebody tell me to get in further debt because this was the right decision for me. That for me is unethical sales. It's
Absolutely.
right. And so I wasn't a right fit for that program at that time. But it seemed like that person on the call cared more about getting that daily close for themselves
Mm-hmm.
than the conflict that I would be in if I were to come home to my husband after we just bought a new condo and now dealing with a mortgage and saying, hey, I'm just going to put, 10, 15,000 on this credit card this month. Not a responsible decision. And so that's kind of like
Yeah.
where now I'm so firm to be in integrity of, like, is this really ethical of me to be selling in this way? And am I doing it for the right reasons? If I
Mm-hmm.
know my product can help someone, that's ethical sales. Unethical is when it's both parties don't feel good. That's how I should say it. Unethical sales is when both parties don't leave the buying conversation feeling really good. So one person's a little like, some doubt, uncertainty, maybe feeling a bit icky, feeling a bit just not feeling good. So that's where for me, I've experienced it and also had to check myself and be like, is this still ethical? Like, am I still on that path? And I think all entrepreneurs should be asking themselves that question, because selling is of service only when it's done ethically. And so when we blur those lines, it could be taking advantage of people, being desperate for money, and doing it just to hit your income goals without helping that other person. That's not the kind of sales I'm into, to be honest. And I see so much of that in the online space. And that's why I think I'm even more passionate about doing sales a different way. Because when you think of sales, you think of icky sales. And so I'm just trying to build something that's so different than that.
Yeah. I'm passionate about it as well. Because my first experience in the online space back when I joined in 2012 was a high pressure sale. I was approached by, this is back when like marketing on Facebook was new. And I was approached by this woman who's like, wow, my boss does this really great coaching group and you'd be amazing and stuff like that. And I'm like, how much is it? And she's like, it's $7,500. I said, I don't have a business yet. I'm 3 weeks in. I have no money coming
Yeah.
in. This is
Yeah.
like, I'm just starting. And she's like, well, so and so joined it. And to do that, she sold her car.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are you willing to do to make, the $100,000 that we think you could make in the first year? What? She's like, if what's $7,500 if you're going to make 100,000?
Totally.
And the pressure sales went on for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was resisting
Yeah.
and I was resisting and I was resisting and so on and so forth. And eventually I was like, this is not comfortable. This is really
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
you making me feel obligated. Anyways, long story short, high pressure sales, bro marketing. That's another one that
Yeah.
absolutely gets my blood
Oh,
boiling. But the problem is these people have figured out how to take advantage of people, right? So you get people brand new to our industry
yeah.
who are willing to do this to take people's money. They're like, the quick, the get rich quick or quick fix thing, and they take people's money. And then those people, when they get to somebody ethical like you and I, they're like, well, I've been burned before, and I'm not so sure I
Yeah.
want to work with you. And you're like, well, crap, dude, like that's not okay that you were treated like that. But now is the time to, now let's look at a new thing. So all that to say, this ethical marketing, this ethical sales. I talk about permission-based marketing all the time. And ethical sales, I think, has a lot of permission-based marketing built into it. On my structure, and I want to talk to you about your structure. I'm really keen on it.
Yeah.
My structure has a lot of permission-based points in it, asking for the yes, asking for the permission before I actually launch into any sort of sales conversation. Basically getting people to ask me, like, can I pay you money? That's my preferred way of sales.
Totally.
Right. So I'd love to dive in. Tell me a little bit more about your structure because you said no script, but structure. What's the structure look like?
The structure would depend on who I'm talking to, when I'm talking to them, and why. So, like, back to your point, because it's not scripted, it's really meeting the person where they're at. But exactly how you're explaining to me of asking for permission, um, and allowing them to also empower themselves through the sales journey. I think that for me is such a fulfilling thing when you see someone make a decision for themselves. And that's what sales is about. It's about getting someone to say yes to something that's going to help them, at least in what I do and who I help. And so if I can create a process which is not forceful, is not high pressure, but is inviting, is
Mm-hmm.
empowering, is asking thoughtful questions, is listening, is, leading with love and service rather than pressure and force, that's the structure that I'm going to create. And so every conversation can look a little bit different. But to your point, that might look like in a sales process, um, not asking them to make a decision on that first call. I know that's something that I remember hearing in the coaching space was like, the goal of a sales call is to get someone to make a decision. And so at the end of this call, I remember a male coach of mine saying, your goal at the end of the call is to get a yes or no. It doesn't matter if it's a no, it's fine, but your job on the call is to get a yes or a no answer. And I followed that model for a pretty long time. And I saw the value in it because I really do believe in the fact that leaders make decisions
Mm-hmm.
often. And as part of being a CEO, you have to make decisions in your business. And your ability to make decisions without asking other people is important. But I also understand that in high ticket services, which is what I sell and what my clients sell, that decisions can't always be made on the spot. And so now the way I've shifted my sales process to be more ethical and to be aligned with me is I don't make anybody make any decisions. In fact, I tell them, you don't have to make a decision right now, anyways. I'm just giving you the information so that you know. They have to take it back. They're
Mm-hmm.
talking to their families about it. They're talking to their teams about it. When I work with corporate teams, there's multiple levels of approval before we sign on a bigger contract.
There's
And
so
so I
many levels.
understand so many levels. And so I understand that it's not a yes or no on that call. And I really dislike when people try and get me to make a decision on that call. And I can feel towards the end of a sales call, they're trying to like get me to make a decision. And that's one of the things that I've just removed from my sales process. You don't have to make a decision. And I also find that the more you pressure people to try and make a decision, even if they're not ready to do it that day, I've had clients come back after weeks and months and said,
Mhm.
I'd love to work with you. But that's because they left the buying conversation feeling really good because there was no pressure versus people who have told me, like, you have 24 hours to make a decision for
Oh
this
God, I
price.
hate that. I hate
Right? Like,
that.
I'm just like, I know it's a bro marketing sales tactic, and
100%.
good for you if it feels good for you, but it doesn't, I don't like being sold to that way, and I won't sell in that way.
I'll
And
just
so
say
for
no,
me,
flat out.
right? I'm like,
Don't
okay, then
care how
it's
much I
not a good
wanted it.
fit for me. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Don't care.
Exactly. And so knowing that the sales process is more about human relationships rather than forceful high pressure decision making tactics,
Hmm.
I'm really switching the way of um, pushing people to close a sale versus empowering them and inviting them to make a decision that will absolutely change their business. They're going to make way more money, they're going to grow a team, they're going to scale their business, we're going to help them hit their goal. But there is no pressure. It's their business, it's their timelines. I always tell people, I'm ready when you are. And so when you're ready, you tell me, and that's when we go. Because I want them to feel, again, this is their business, their decisions. So that's been a small shift, but that I have seen make a very big difference, not only in how I feel in the sales process, but I can see my clients like relax and build trust with me and not feel like she wants my credit card, which is what a lot of people feel. And that's not good for sales.
No, no. And that exhale of being like the having that potential client just relax and go, oh, okay, we're just having a conversation and I can get
Yes,
my questions answered and nobody's going to force me to do something that I'm not prepared to do in this moment.
yes, yes,
That I find, and let me know what you think, I find that that actually closes the sale mentally, even if they don't have the authority
absolutely.
yet to give, like, right? So with corporate, they now become your champion. They'll go to HR or they'll go to the decision maker and be like, I just spoke to this person.
Exactly.
And I think this is the right move. And that's what sells it, right? I used to do corporate, I used to work in corporate, I used to work in gold mining. When I left gold mining, I was doing in person event planning. So, like in person events. And one of the things that I planned was charity golf tournaments.
Ooh, so
Super fun.
fun.
Loved doing this. And I would go not to the person who's making the decision, but usually to their assistant or to somebody a little bit lower, like usually by referral, but normally just not the decision maker per se, the person writing the check or the vice president or whatever it was. And I would end up having those conversations, coffee chats, lunch, whatever.
Yes,
And that person would go back to the up, the higher up and say, oh my gosh, like we really need to work with these people. They're going to make it like so simple. They're going to take all of the things
yes,
away and they're going to
yes.
like, blah, blah, blah. And that's what sold more than anything else. And I think your approach is really, really solid because it allows people to go at the pace that they need to. And I think you get more yeses that way than any sort of
You
pressure sale. I
do.
hate
You
pressure
do.
sales.
In sales, like people want you to feel that you've got their best interests in mind. And
Hmm.
it's a long-term relationship game. So they'll feel if I've got my commissions in mind versus if I've got their golf charity event in mind. They'll
Hmm.
know that difference in that feeling. One of the sayings I love most about sales is like people buy based on emotions and then justify it with logic. And so if you can understand that concept, sales really is about emotions, how they feel. How they feel is based on relationships, our human connection with one another. And so in a sales process, like you would laugh at how many times like people are like, oh, like what's your sales conversation like? And I'm like, we crack a lot of jokes. We talk about food, we hang out, like we get to know about each other
Yep.
because people work with people they trust. And so if I can build that up front, I'm not the person that's jumping right into like, here's the agenda for this call. This is what we're going to cover. Like what, like it just feels so much. And
Yeah.
if I look back to some of my biggest deals, I've talked about this on another podcast before, like I look back at some of my biggest deals and like I've been yelling at my cat for being in the camera and like putting her butt in the face and like that creating humor and connection with my prospect. a lot less about the offer and the number and all that, and a lot more about that human connection and their trust and our relatability and what we have in common. And yes, of course, we talk about sales and where they're at and the pain points and all those things that you hear marketers talk about, like the pre-qualifying questions and then the distant, like I'm understanding all of those things, but I'm just saying they're not as important as the relationship, the connection, and the trust. And so in my sales process, that's where I believe authenticity shines, because when you're being yourself and you're not following a script, that's how people build trust. That's how people build connection. That's how we can crack jokes and realize, you know what? You seem like a person that I would want to do business with. And then that opens the gate for us to be like, I want you to talk to my boss because we think that you have a solution to what we're looking for. That comes as step two versus step one is building that human connection.
Agreed. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you, so you work with, like, who is your main clientele that you work with? Are you completely B2B? Are you like, what is the main clientele? And are they mostly online? Are they in person? What is it?
I wish I could give one clean answer because I know that like niching is important and that's like the easy
Oh,
thing is to have a
no.
one line, but I just don't have it. We work with two groups of humans. The first group is that entrepreneur who has already built their business, they've tried some few things, and they've kind of already seen some success, I air quote, whatever that looks like for them. They've seen some success in their business, but they would like to scale that process and they would like to grow that business. So that's the entrepreneurial human that we work with. So that's our like B2C, but then we've also got this component where we work with corporate teams. And so how I would categorize that ideal audience is a team that has anywhere between 1 to 5 sales reps. And they either use a CRM or are looking to use a CRM for their sales process. My team and I have extensive experience, knowledge, and strategy ideas when it comes to CRM corporate teams and doing things like automations, workflows, and all that fun stuff. So that's how we help the corporate person. But I'm an entrepreneur. I love working with entrepreneurs. And so there's part of me that still mentors and coaches different masterminds and 6 to 7 figure entrepreneurs who are just about scaling to that next level.
Me too.
Yeah.
I have to, I mean, I niche to the like the lead generation. And I mean, I talk about being a fractional CMO because the CMO piece helps me get into the larger businesses, the 30 plus employees, the 3 to 5 person sales teams, and so on, and fix all the things that are just minutely causing their sales process to break down. And they always have a lead gen problem every single time. And the other side, the list building and lead generation, and I'm known for these online summits, that lets me work with the solopreneur
Yeah.
or the solopreneur plus like small and mighty team kind of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're so great to work with. So
Yeah.
it's such a nice, and the funny thing is you pull some of the stuff that you learn from the corporate side, and you're able to infuse it into the entrepreneur solopreneur side, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
And you elevate those people because they don't have that sort of like, and I'm using air quotes here too, like the business acumen
Yeah.
necessarily, right? They don't have a CFO and all that kind of stuff, but you're like, hey, we can pull some of this stuff in. I think you're trying to find a cool balance of being able to do that and, which is really, really good. So that's a lot of fun, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be easy to just work with one group of people. So it makes sense for our website and our offer and all that stuff. But I talk about not trying to fit yourself into a box. And so I'm taking my own advice. I love working with entrepreneurs. That's where my absolute passion lies. And a lot of our clients that we work with start off in that entrepreneurial space and then also move and scale to that more corporate 1 to 5 sales rep. And so some of the clients that I've worked with them in both capacities as they've transitioned over, which is pretty cool to see that growth as well.
Mm-hmm. Something that you mentioned when you filled out, like we have a little form that we ask speakers to fill out. And something that was put into the form that I thought was really interesting because it talks about funnels, is that you're against like copy and paste funnels that and you don't love email templates. Why is the question, because a lot of people rely on ChatGPT these
Uh,
days, they rely on
uh,
AI these days. So like I'm dying to hear your thoughts and opinion on this.
Even as I was writing that, I was like, I cannot believe I'm writing this because I'm going on a podcast that is all about the mechanics of sales, that is about like
Mm-hmm.
lead gen and getting emails and putting them into a sales pipeline. So it's definitely a out of box.
Yeah, you said it was controversial.
Yeah, it is a bit controversial because people will be like, well, you're leaving money on the table. I'm not against email marketing, um, but I'm against it being copy and paste and you buying templates of proven frameworks and then just plugging and playing. And I'll tell you why. Again, I'm being honest with you to tell you that I used to do this stuff. So in 2020, my model for my program was I had a 6 month coaching program called Cash in Your Passion. And every few months, we would run a 5 day challenge where we would help people identify that business model and kind of move into the first few steps. And I did all that stuff. So I did, the landing page for the sign up. They got into the email. My team, Trevor and I, like we would write the automated emails. And so I've done these things. But I also feel that when I did that in 2020, the landscape of the online space was very different than it is right now. Um, I have seen, I'm going to be honest with you, like at least 10 plus coaches use the same templates. Like I've just seen it. And so
Of
that's the
course.
part where I'm like, I believe people see through that stuff now. And so in a very saturated market, people are like, oh, how to stand out? Be yourself. Write your own marketing emails. Like, yes, hire experts, but showcase your authenticity. So when I would write emails, I have trouble writing emails, but I have a big, bold personality. And so my email would be like, hey, you, I recorded this video for you. Please click it to watch it. And I would send them a video. So I'm not against doing those sorts of things, but I want people to make it their own because that's how people connect with you. And so when I would send a video, people knew that that wasn't something my teammate wrote, or it's not something I got off Chat GPT. It was me. You were seeing and hearing from the real Gazzy. And so that's how we build connection. Again, because I'm so involved in the industry now as well, I'm like, this stuff could fly in 2020, but in 2024, you got to get creative. And by creative, I mean just be your damn self because that's actually the way to get you to stand out. So I'm not saying don't use the funnels. Like I've used a click funnels um, yeah, the funnel. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had an entire process that I bought off of someone and plugged and played. I haven't done it with email automations, but I've done it with the ClickFunnels stuff. But I've made it my own. And even now, when we work with our corporate teams, like we write automations and sequencing and workflows, but every single one is customized and handwritten. Yes, sales are generally the same, but a client of mine who sells real estate and a client of mine who sells pelvic floor physio, we are going to talk to these humans in email marketing in a very different way. They are different people, they are different companies, they've got different missions, they've got different tonality. And so I'm not going to get one template and use them for all of them. And I see so many people sell those types of products in the industry where it's like, take my proven framework that hundreds of other people have used. I'm like, that's not what I want. I don't want something hundreds of people would have used because prospects are smart, buyers are educated. They
Yeah,
see through that stuff, right? That's
they
my
do,
perspective on it.
especially if you're trying to sell high ticket. Like super, super they're really paying attention. They're not going to miss that. And I think that's where people kind of screw up, right?
Yeah,
So
and it's like, and not even they're not going to miss it. It's like they can smell that shit from a mile away. So I'm like, when you've got rotten milk in your fridge, like as soon as you open the fridge, like the smell's kind of there. You don't even have to like look to see like where is it. It's like, oh my God, I think this is like not good. That's how it feels when you open an email that has been reused by a bunch of other people or captions. I've seen people use captions. I've seen like I've been a part of many challenges in my entrepreneurial journey. I've seen people use the same like 5 day model as soon as they're about to pitch on day 5. It's like, now let me ask you this. So how badly do you want this? You're in the right place if. I'm like, everyone's already doing this. So it's just, it's not original to me. And I'm not going to pay someone high ticket if they copy and paste from other people. I'm like, I'm not giving you my money. I'm sorry.
What sales strategies, and this is going to be like my wrapping up kind of question,
Yeah.
what sales strategies do you think are working, right? So you said 5 day challenge, not really. I know that you talked about like the good old webinar. By the way, I run webinars, so feeling a little called out, but
Listen,
it's
I
okay.
run webinars too and for my clients as well. So
But
like
the
I
different
can't be hating
ones.
too much.
Yeah, we're not
Yeah.
talking about like what do they call it? The funnel stack and all those kinds of things, right? What is working in your opinion? What should people be focusing on to close a sale if it's not like a 5 day challenge where day 5 they're going into the sales process?
Yeah.
What should people be doing?
Well, I would do a challenge to be honest. I don't even want to take that off the table. What I if I I'll answer this in two-part, challenge part first, because I don't want anyone to be like, oh, what challenge and webinar? Like that was my way. Make it your own. So when I say like the scripted part, it's like, when you go to a challenge and they give no value, it's like they're giving stuff that I could find on an online Google search. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. Like you're not delivering value. So if I were to do it, I would give lots of value. I would treat it like people had paid $1,000 to be there because I know that's going to close more. In terms of webinar, even like if you do a webinar, do it in your own way. But that part where it like leads up to the end where it's like, they're about to ask you to book a link or tell you this exclusive offer, like if you're doing it scripted, you can even feel the person being like, they get nervous, their thoughts and feelings around sales are now suddenly the energy has shifted.
They
So
start
it's just
shifting
about,
gears.
yes, and you
Yeah.
can feel it's not a clean shift. It's not smooth. It's like it's rusty, So if you are doing those things, how can you make it your own? What I have found is really working in the sales space. And actually, one of the humans that was at the networking event that we met at, she sent me a DM and she said, I got a sale from one of the strategies that you told me about. And I asked her which one, and she said voice notes. So I find that really works, at least for me. Someone else might be like, that's not it for
Love
me.
that
But in a
strategy,
world
actually.
where, right, like in a world where people are DMing, like, hey, I just checked out your profile. I noticed you do this. Do you want to learn how to do this? Like, the typical cold DM. When I have somebody sliding in with a voice note being like, hey, I just checked out your profile. You do this. Like, what's that about? Let's like, I thought we have a lot in common. Like, just being a real human and sending a voice note. I find that your reply rate is going to be way higher. Um, and so that works for me right now. Networking is working for me. I love selling in the online space, but I find that as people are coming out of, that post-pandemic work from home bubble, they're really loving going in person and meeting in person and having those conversations there. So that's what works for me, but it's about finding what works for you. Because again, you can use my voice note sales strategy. And if you think you sound weird or you hate sending voice notes, it's not going to work for you.
No.
If you really love webinars, Jennie, and you're like, that works for me, like you rock that. So that's really what I would say. It's about finding what works for you and then doubling down on that system rather than trying other people's system and trying to box yourself in to see if you can make their system work for you.
Exactly. That's like everybody's, I mean, and no shade to Jeff Walker, but like everybody using like the Jeff Walker sales system. It's like, no, it's not going to work for you. It doesn't
Yeah.
fit. You got to make it your, like, you got to make it your own. And I love that you say that. It's something that I truly believe as well. So as we wrap up, where can everybody find you? Because I'm sure we have rabid people ready to punch buttons to get connected
Yes.
with you.
Yes, I would love to connect with you. I always say, like, if you listen to this podcast all the way to the end, please send me a message because I want to know that you listened and that you got some value. So if you would either hit me up on LinkedIn, it's Gazzy Amin. That's where I might write more of like my blog filtered version. And if you really want to hang out with me, then you find me on Instagram. I'm at Authentic Gazzy. That's where I hang out in stories. I show you my cat. I do tutorial Tuesdays. It's unhinged, authentic Gazzy. So I hope you'll either connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram, whatever suits you best, and that we can connect and continue the conversation there.
Absolutely. And when we met in person, you literally changed at the event to go to a night event, and you went from like daytime look to nighttime look, which I thought was really, really cool, but you still wore like the same shoes, which was awesome. So I
That's
had a
so
lot of
fun.
fun meeting you. It was really, really great. Ghazi, I really appreciate you sort of sharing your time and talking about sales strategies. We'll put everything that you talked about and where to find you in the show notes. So make sure you check those out. And if you liked today's episode, I'd love to connect with you more deeply. So make sure that you do subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any more. We have got some great episodes. I am so like super excited for the next couple of weeks. We've got some great people coming on, and I've got some really good solo episodes that I'm going to share. So go ahead and do that. You can find that anywhere you're listening to your podcasts. And as always, the Acquire podcast is brought to you by the Oddphonic Podcast Network. And make sure you connect with me on my socials. All right. Thanks so much. We'll see y'all soon.